I'm going to try to make this video really quick and not spend too much time talking about how to do Kumihimo. I just want to talk about how I finish off my little key rings, my purse dangles, and even zipper pulls. You can use any kind of clasp you want. I use these tiny lobster clasp for a zipper pull with some small thread. And so choose the clasp that you want to use based on what you're going to be using the project for. Like there's a key ring here on this one, and I put a swivel clasp on that one to use as a purse dangle, and I wanted to talk about adding beads and charms. The pattern I'm using today has a bold spiral. You see the blue and the red or the orange on there, and then you have some more subtle colors that kind of alternate white and brown, white and brown. So I'll show the setup for that. I have it on my phone here. You need 4 colors. I'm using these bold ones so that they'll show up on the video. And we're not going to have a knot. We're not going to have cut thread in the middle with a knot. We're going to have this attached directly to the clasp or your key ring. And so we're going to cut our length double what you would. It's going to be a 16 strand pattern, and you would normally have 16 strands tied together in a knot, but we're only cutting 8 strands and 2 strands for each color. That way we can put this on the key ring in the middle and it'll be the same as 16 strands. Hope that makes sense. So I've got 4 colors that are pretty bold. I think they'll show up pretty well on the camera. So I'm going to choose, let's go with the blue and the orange as my spiral, that those colors that stay solid all the way around. Then I'll have the white and the black alternating as the little alternating colors on the band. Alright, the loom I like to use is on a project. It looks like this, except for the one that I like to use has a big hole in the middle. This one's just, for me, it's too tiny to work with. So I just have a little homemade one here. It's got some foam glued down to a piece of, or 3D printed, and it works pretty well, but it'll serve the purpose for this video. So I'm just going to start laying everything out, and you can put the yarn through the key ring now, and or whatever clasp you're using. The procedure of this is all the same. It doesn't matter what you're making in the end. So I want that about halfway down, and then I'm going to try to keep the ends pretty close. They won't stay once I start setting up my loom, so I'll have to straighten up the ends later. So I'm just going to pass them all through the hole, and the key ring is just going to lay there for the time being. So I just kind of like to get everything straight. So I think we said green and orange as the north, south, east, west. So I'm going to take these, since my key ring is kind of hanging this way, it's more natural for me to take the green together across that key ring and go up to the north position and just pinch it there so they kind of stay in place so they don't get short on one end. So I'll do green as the north and south, but I'm going to kind of work my way around a little bit. So I'm just going to do a white one next to that number 4, so that's kind of a northeast. And so I'll take the other end of that white one and do the northwest, because they kind of go together through that key ring. That's why I'm doing that. And then I'm going to take this other green one, just kind of pull them in the order. You can always straighten out later, but I don't like things crossed over each other. I like them to stay pretty neat. Some of this can be fixed at the end, so I'm trying to keep it at the halfway mark. And I'm going to take, hope I'm not confusing everything here, take the opposite green and put it at the south mark. So I've got green going north and south. And I think I chose orange as my east and west. So I'm just going to take an orange strand and go on the west side. And since it's traveling through the key ring, this really doesn't matter, but it does kind of help it to look a little neater on the key ring. As long as your colors are in order, it really doesn't matter, because we're going to try to do our stitches tight. So I've got one of the orange ones there, and I'll do another orange one as my east and west. And then I need to do, I'm kind of referring to my pattern here, I need to do a black one, needs to come up here by these white ones, like that. My phone's going to sleep. So then, since black was on the bottom there and it's closer to the middle, I want the black to be closer to the middle again. And I can already see I'm going to have to rearrange some of this stuff. So I'm just going to put the black, black, and then white, white. So that's the arrangement there. So it's 16 strands, and you can do an 8 strand or a 12 strand or a 24. The way the round braid works in Kumihimo, it's all the same movement. But in order to get the color arrangement that I've gotten on my little purse dangle, this is how I laid it out. Alright, I've got a little 3D printed weight that's got some pennies in it that weighs about 1.5 ounces, and I'm going to hang that on my key ring and get ready to braid. So I'm just going to go through the motions that a round braid normally takes, and again, it doesn't matter how many threads or how many pairs you've got on your loom. The motion is always, I do it left, right, and then turn, but some people do the right first and then the left. But either way, the rightmost one's going to come down to the right, and the leftmost one's going to go up to the left of the ones that are straight across from each other. So the north-south, I always start on the left, so the left goes up, right goes down. So I'm going to go left up, right down. So it's going to stay to the right. It's not going to cross over. There's other patterns that it does, but not on this one. So that's 2 steps. The next step is to turn counterclockwise to your next pair. Okay, so I'm going to come down to the left, the one that's straight across from it, left up, and right down. Turn, left up, right down. Keep going. It takes about 10 minutes to braid for the keychain. This is a very quick and easy project, and I should be pulling tight every time I do this, and because it's going to make a difference. But I'm trying to just talk and get through the video at this point, so I'm not really paying that much attention. But if you want all this to be neat in the middle, pull it tight, especially at the beginning, and try to keep the same tension throughout. So that's left up, right down. So I'm just going to braid for a little while longer, and then I'll come back when it's time to bind the end of it. So when you think you've got enough for the length of your braided part of your keychain, you can stop weaving or braiding. I usually go about another 1/4 inch or so in case it gets a little messed up when I take it off of the loom. It can start unraveling a little bit depending on the stiffness of your yarn. So sometimes I'll go a few rows extra just in case, and then you'll take underneath, you're just going to pinch at the base just to keep everything orderly, and I'm just holding it like that and just taking it off the loom. think I spent about 5 minutes braiding that little bit. This is one of those, it takes longer to set up the loom than it does actually to braid. Sometimes it's a disappointment because I get in the zone braiding and then all of a sudden I'm finished. So sometimes I like to do the long lanyards. So you can see on this pattern the strong colors that I chose for the spiral, they're staying solid. Then the black and white are alternating based on how we set the loom up. So whatever pattern you're doing, however your colors are set up to start with determines what the rest of the braid is going to look like. So I'm going to clip this temporarily. I just got these little clips I picked up in the jewelry department at not the jewelry, but the jewelry crafts, the beads and stuff at Walmart. They have these little clips there. So that's just going to hold it until I'm ready to do the next step. I don't think I mentioned at the beginning of the video the length that I cut my threads, and I always give myself a generous amount because I like to have a lot to work with and to weigh things down and stuff at the end. I don't like fighting with short tails. But on this one, I started my strands at 28 inches, and when they were folded in half, it was 14. So, and then I had the 8 strands, 2 of each color. You're also going to need another strand, about 20 inches or so. Again, that's more than I need. And that's going to be the color that you choose to bind with right there. So it doesn't matter what color or what yarn you use for that. So a clipboard can be handy for this, or something to weigh your project down with. So I'm just going to lay that on top of that. It's a really heavy weight, and what you want to do is start with a loop like that, and I like to leave a long enough tail so it can be part of my fringe, and I'll tie a knot on that one so I don't get it mixed up with everything else, because they'll all start blending, and in the end we're going to have to pull on this one, and we need to know which one it is. So here's the end of my braid right here. Let's see if I can move this stuff farther out. I got my water there that might get knocked over. Sorry, I wasn't planning on this video, so I'm not organized at all. Okay, so I'm going to fold a yarn, leave a little bit of a tail there, and I'm going to put the loop up here at the end of my braid. I can remove that clip. I'm just going to keep that pinched right there. And you want a good size loop so that you can get your tail, the tail through there. So this one with the knot on it, we don't need that one right now, so I'm just going to get it out of the way. And the rest of this is going to be what I'm going to wrap with. So I'm going to start wrapping in the direction of the cut tails for about 1/4 inch. And you want to wrap very tightly, and you want to wrap neatly, like the wraps close to each other, like in it, not crossing over each other, but you know, kind of in a little neat orderly row like that. And I'm pulling really tightly, and I'm keeping my thumb pinched over that little loop so that that stays in place. So I've got that pretty tight, and I've gone a little more than 1/4 inch. Now I want to start wrapping back toward where I started, back toward the key ring and the loop that I left, and I'm still pulling very tightly. Alright, so now I'm going to switch my pinch away from the loop so I can get to it, but I don't want my wrap to come unwrapped, so you got to stay pinched the whole time. And this long tail that I was wrapping with, I'm going to either bring it down through that loop, or whatever way you want to go, just go through that loop. And we want to pull a little bit of this down into the binding. So you don't want to pull this real tight right here. We got to be able to pull some of it in. And depending on your yarn, this yarn does not slip very well, and sometimes I break it trying to pull that through. So as I pull on the part that we put a knot on, this loop is going to close over that tail. See if I can keep all this where you can see it. Let me find my little knot. See how easy it is to get lost? Alright, so as I pull that down, I need to be able to pull that into the bundle and have it go down a little ways in there to secure that end of it. And you know, it's not a big deal if you break the yarn. You can just start over on this. Nothing has happened anywhere else. So I did feel it go in there a little ways. You can add a dot of fray check or glue or whatever if you're worried about that coming back out, but it usually holds pretty well. So the end that we were wrapping with, I'm going to go ahead and just, for now, I just leave a little bit, just because I like to know where it is right now. I'll come back with some glue or something and trim that close later. And the end that we had a knot on, it's going to become part of the fringe. So I don't cut the tails because I like a lot to work with. So you're going to take your charm and decide which one of these strings you want it to hang off of. Doesn't matter, just choose one of them. And I'm going to use a dental floss threader, come up through the back of my charm and pull that yarn through the charm. Alright, so now the tail is coming out through the front of my charm. It's really hard to stay in the camera. So you decide how low you want your charm to hang. I usually put mine up a little bit close like that, and then you take a tapestry needle or a thin yarn needle. It has to be as small as possible, but your yarn has to be able to fit through there. If you have to, you can split the plies and run this through. If you can't fit it through a needle, you can just take your plies and do them half at a time. But I've already used this needle, so I know it works. So I'm just going to poke that through that needle. And I'm going to decide how low I want my charm to hang. And I'm going to come up through that bundle underneath toward the top. And I always have to use pliers for this because I tied my bundle very tightly. It's not too bad. And you want to make sure that tail comes through right there. And then you can adjust your charm if you want to. So now I don't want to just come back in and hide that tail yet because the charm will just pull right out. I'm not going to take the time to do a lot of it right now because this is not a real project. But I take and I go through the braid a few times. Sometimes I'll go around twice. And this thread's not going to show, this yarn's not going to show because it's hidden inside the braid. And then when I think it's strong enough to hold the charm, I'll come back down through the bundle. So you can pull on the charm really hard to see if it's slipping. It's not. And then I'll go back down through the bundle to hide that tail. And so it did help that I was using the same color for my charm as the bundle, but it's not necessary because it doesn't really show, but I just happened to notice that just now that they're the same color. So I pull that back through the bundle, and then I can cut this one close. So my charm, or I can leave that as a fringe. Let's just leave it as a fringe. Alright, so now for the beads. Depending on the yarn that you're using, this is Hobby Lobby, I love this yarn. So the 6/0 seed beads that I've been playing with do not fit through this yarn very well. So the way I did my other project, I didn't put beads on every strand, just I picked 3 or 4 strands, and I thought it looked cute just to have a little bit of that bling sticking out. So choose whatever strands you want to hang your beads on. I'm just going to try to pick a color that you can see. And then you untwist it because, like I said, the yarn is too thick. So if you are using a plied yarn, this is 4-ply, I'm going to split it in half. And so I'll have 2 strands on each side. So you just kind of start untwisting the yarn. You can use a knitting needle, a pin, whatever you can. Sometimes I just use my fingernail. And I've got now 2 strands on each side. And that's going to make it a lot easier to thread the beads. Now some yarn, if you start undoing the plies like that, it makes the yarn really weak. So you'll just have to test it out and see. Worst case scenario, you can hang beads on a separate type of cord or string in here and wrap them around the key ring and come back down through the body of this thing, and you'd never know you added a cord on there. But this is the way I've done it. So you just load up whatever color beads you want, and I'm not going to be picky about this one because again, this is not a real project. You put as many beads as you want on the dental floss threader and pull your yarn through the beads. And you can slide the bead, you can have them dangling down, you can have them all the way up. Same thing with the charm, put the beads where you want them, and then just tie, I don't know what kind of knot this is, I just go around my finger like that and pull the end through. If the knot is not big enough to keep the beads from going through, you may have to do a second knot or come up with another bead or something to keep those from sliding off. But I've been using these beads with this yarn and I have not had that problem. And then you can trim this with your fringe later. So just pick out a few strands on your project that you want to split the plies and add the beads. So the other ply that we did not use, you can add beads to that one too, or you can just kind of, if you don't want it all frayed out like this, you can kind of twist it back into shape. I like the little curly look to it, so no big deal there. But most of the time I'm going to put beads on both ends of these things so that they're together. So now you just trim your fringe to the length that you want it without destroying your beads there. And that's all there is to it. Put your little glue and trim that off. So that's how I add beads and charms to the ends of my little keychain.